Welcome to this explainer. Look, we are diving straight in today because there is a massive, absolutely urgent shift happening right now in the Indian pharmaceutical landscape. If you manufacture drugs or hold a market authorization in India, ignoring pharmacovigilance? Yeah, that's officially no longer an option. Today, we're breaking down the recent CDSCO circular. And honestly, diving into this source material, the biggest shock for me was realizing just how sweeping this mandate actually is. It's a complete wake-up call for every single pharmaceutical manufacturer in the country. The landscape has fundamentally changed. So we really need to unpack exactly what these new mandates mean, the severe risks of ignoring them, and how you can seamlessly bridge any compliance gaps you might currently be dealing with.
So, let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this for a second. This is absolutely not rhetorical. Does your organization actually have a functioning PV system in place? Just take a hard look at your current operations. In the past, maybe that question just caused a slight wince in the boardroom. But today, if your answer is no, or I'm not really sure, or even just a hesitant kinda, you are standing squarely in the crosshairs of a major regulatory shift. The days of flying under the radar without a concrete, dedicated system are completely over. It used to be this open secret that a lot of companies operated without one, just hoping to avoid the spotlight. Well, that strategy just expired.
We are seeing a really profound mindset shift here. For the longest time, pharmacovigilance was widely treated as just a recommendation. You know, a nice to have, a best practice. Maybe something you'd finally get around to when the budget miraculously doubled, right? Well, that era is entirely dead. The new reality we're living in is regulatory expectation. Your PV compliance isn't a polite suggestion anymore. It's going to be actively verified during routine regulatory inspections and your standard day-to-day regulatory activities. It is now the strict, non-negotiable standard by which your manufacturing license is going to be judged. And let's be honest, absolutely nothing strikes universal dread quite like a surprise regulatory audit when you know your house isn't in order.
So, what's the actual legal mandate driving all of this? It comes straight from Schedule M of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, and it lays out that manufacturers are legally required to establish and maintain an effective pharmacovigilance, or PV, system. Okay, but what does that actually mean in plain English? Basically, you must have a dedicated framework specifically built for collecting, processing, and reporting adverse drug reactions, or ADRs. Think about what happens when an ADR goes completely unreported. A patient takes a medication, experiences a severe, undocumented side effect, and because there's no system to capture that critical data, the manufacturer is completely blind. And worse, more patients are put at serious risk. This mandate exists to ensure you are never blind. You have to have a mechanism to track what happens when your product enters the real world, into real human bodies, and you must rapidly report those findings.
Now, I want to address a really dangerous myth that's circulating out there, and honestly, it's one I used to hear all the time. A lot of mid-sized and smaller manufacturers just assume that PV is this luxury reserved for the massive multinational giants, the ones with infinite resources, right? But looking at the source material, it's glaringly obvious that this is a hugely costly mistake. In fact, surprisingly large percentages of mid-sized companies currently lack any formal PV structure simply because they've relied on this exact misconception. Listen, the CDSCO circular does not care about your headcount, and it certainly does not care about your revenue size. There are no carve-outs or exemptions for being the little guy. If you manufacture pharmaceuticals in India, this rule applies to you in full force. Believing otherwise leaves your entire business profoundly vulnerable to immediate action.
All right, let's do a rapid-fire internal audit right here, right now. These are the exact red flags that will literally make a visiting inspector's eyes light up with a very specific, terrifying kind of joy. Ready? Do you lack a dedicated PV department? Do you have zero qualified PV personnel on staff? Are you operating without standard operating procedures or a dedicated safety database? What about your formal ADR management process? Does that even exist? Or do you just completely lack a regulatory reporting mechanism altogether? If you are checking off any of these boxes as we speak, the source material makes it unequivocal. You have a giant target on your back for compliance gaps during your next inspection. These are not minor administrative oversights anymore, they are catastrophic vulnerabilities.
But hey, let's take a step back from the looming threat of an audit for a second. Because having a robust PV system isn't just about frantically trying to meet regulations. It's actually about protecting patient safety, maintaining product confidence, and safeguarding your business reputation. Sure, it keeps the regulators happy and the fines at bay, which is great, but fundamentally, this is a massive business opportunity. By implementing a proper system, you are actively protecting the very people taking your medicine. You're ensuring the market actually trusts your brand. And ultimately, you're building this protective, unshakable wall around your company's integrity. It's an investment in your own survival and growth.
So how do you actually pull this off if you're starting from absolute scratch? Or worse, if your current setup is just a collection of those red flags we literally just talked about? Well, the source material points to comprehensive solutions like SafeMed Global as a really practical way the industry is bridging these massive gaps. They essentially step in and provide end-to-end pharmacovigilance services to do the heavy lifting for you. This means the actual, physical setup and implementation of a PV department, building out those critical SOPs, seamlessly handling the ADR case processing and reporting, and doing the required literature monitoring. They even handle the aggregate report support and that necessary PV training. It's just a prime example of how you can rapidly deploy a tailored, cost-effective solution without having to painstakingly reinvent the wheel internally, especially while the regulatory clock is ticking.
We've definitely covered a lot of crucial ground today, from the urgent new expectations of Schedule M to those glaring operational red flags that you simply can't ignore anymore. In this new era of Indian pharmacovigilance, being proactive isn't just a strategy. It's quite literally the only way to survive. Waiting until an inspector actually uncovers a gap means the damage to your business and, potentially to human lives is already done. If you need to start that conversation and get your house in order, SafeMed Global's contact details are right there for you to act on. But before we wrap up, I really want to leave you with this final, critical thought to chew on. Are you going to wait for a disastrous regulatory finding to force your hand, or are you going to take proactive control of your patient's safety and your business legacy today? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning and stay focused.